in the state of Idaho, if you adjust for inflation, education in the state of Idaho costs no more than it did 30 years ago. If you compare the costs of the pandemic with the change in employee compensation, the freeze in tuition, and that underfunding per student, before the pandemic, and ongoing, but even before the pandemic, when we had those financial pressures, we were one of the most efficient universities or most efficient institutions in the state. We've already made cuts across the university, as you know. We had furloughs, staff and faculty furloughs. We did take some cuts at the beginning of the pandemic. And what we may have to do is cut more, but what my aim is to do my best not to cut the academic enterprise, because that's our students' progress to degree, and not to cut student support services, because that is also our students' progress to degree. During the pandemic, it's easier for someone who has access to the city, who has the city at their fingertips, to get information, to learn about opportunities, but also to see what it looks like to be a part of that program, to earn that degree. Growing up in the town that I grew up in, the only people I knew who had degrees were my high school teachers, and we have a special responsibility to serve students who are like me, to serve those young people from across the state of Idaho who have such talents to bring, because we do a disservice to the world if we don't educate those young people and get their voices into the conversation. Because those kids that are living in rural Idaho have something to give that nobody who's living in the San Francisco Bay Area has to give, that nobody who's living in New York City has to give. And we can't let that fear stop people from accessing that degree, and we can't let economics stop people from accessing those degrees. It applies a new challenge to the situation, and it means that we have to be so much more deliberate. So for me, the Community Impact Program was a first step. How do we become even more deliberate about making sure that we are representative of the state of Idaho and that we serve every student from the state of Idaho that comes here? Because that's our mission. If fear keeps people from accessing education, it's a loss to all of us. So the more our faculty can articulate and encourage our students to be engaged in dialogue and articulate that they have a right to their own values and beliefs. And so we have a responsibility, just as I said earlier, we have a responsibility to make sure people understand the value of higher education. We have a responsibility to help them understand what our mission is. And that's going to be a big priority going forward, because the legislation is this call to us to make sure we articulate that. But in the vast majority of cases, it was already what our excellent faculty were doing.